The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 47 different worlds filled the floating seats that circled the central speaking platform. The air itself seemed thick with fear and desperation. Admiral Zephys, a tall, blue-skinned creature with 6 arms, stood at the center podium. His voice boomed through the translation devices attached to every seat. The Vorthak Empire has taken another system. Kepler 442 fell yesterday, 12 star systems in 6 months. If we do not act now, they will reach the core worlds within a year. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The crystalline coalition's representative, a being made entirely of living diamond, sparked with worried light. The Aquarian delegates bubbled anxiously in their water-filled enclosures. Even the proud Drakmari, with their scaled skin and warrior culture, looked concerned. We need every ship, every soldier, every weapon we can gather. Admiral Zephys continued. The Vorthak military machine is unlike anything we have faced. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They conquer or they die trying. The Admiral's 6 arms gestured to a holographic display showing the Vorthak advance. Red markers swept across star map after star map. Each red dot represented billions of lives under alien control. Each member world will contribute according to their ability, the Admiral announced. The Drakmari have pledged 50,000 warriors. The Zephyrian Navy will provide 200 warships. The Aquarians will send their entire submarine fleet converted for space combat. One by one, each representative stood to announce their contribution. The numbers were staggering. Millions of soldiers, thousands of ships, weapons that could crack planets in half. The chamber filled with a sense of growing hope as the massive fleet took shape. Then Ambassador Chen Wei stepped forward. The human looked small compared to the other representatives. She wore a simple black uniform with no decorations except a small flag patch showing blue and green earth. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style. She appeared calm despite being surrounded by beings who could crush her without effort. The United Earth government pledges its full support to this alliance, she said in clear, steady voice. We will send our very best to help defend against the Vorthak threat. Admiral Zephys nodded approvingly. Humans were new to the Galactic Federation, having joined only 3 years ago. Their planet was small and their technology basic compared to other members, but every contribution mattered in times like these. How many ships can Earth provide? The Admiral asked. None. Ambassador Chen replied simply. A confused silence fell over the chamber. Several delegates exchanged glances. I see, the Admiral said slowly. Then how many soldiers will Earth contribute to the defense fleet? Ambassador Chen stood straighter. 3. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then someone in the Drakmari section made a sound that might have been a laugh. It spread quickly through the chamber until dozens of species were expressing their version of amusement. Did the human say 3? Asked Commander Vash, the lead Drakmari representative. His scaled face twisted into what humans might recognize as a sneer. Perhaps the translation devices are malfunctioning. The translation is correct, Ambassador Chen said calmly. Earth will send 3 soldiers. The laughter grew louder. Admiral Zephys raised his hands for silence, but his expression showed he was fighting his own amusement. Ambassador Chen, he said carefully, perhaps you misunderstood the scope of this conflict. We are facing an enemy that has conquered 12 star systems. We need armies, not individuals. I understand perfectly, Chen replied. Earth will send 3 of our best soldiers. They will be sufficient. This time the laughter was so loud it echoed off the crystal dome. Commander Vash stood up, his massive frame towering over nearby seats. Sufficient? He roared. The Vorthak Empire has millions of warriors. They have weapons that can melt metal at 1,000 kilometers. They have ships the size of moons. And Earth sends 3 soldiers? Perhaps, suggested the crystalline coalition representative in a voice like breaking glass. Earth does not fully appreciate the seriousness of this situation. 3 soldiers is not a military contribution. It is an insult. Ambassador Chen waited for the noise to die down. When she spoke again, her voice carried clearly to every corner of the chamber. Earth has studied the Vorthak Empire carefully. We have analyzed their tactics, their technology, and their methods. We believe 3 soldiers, properly trained and equipped, can make a meaningful contribution to this war. Meaningful? Commander Vash's laugh was bitter. Human, I have personally killed more than 3 enemies in single battles. What could 3 of your people possibly accomplish? You will see, Chen said simply. Admiral Zephys looked around the chamber. The other representatives were still chuckling among themselves. Some were shaking their heads in disbelief. A few looked genuinely angry at what they saw as Earth's lack of commitment. Ambassador Chen, the Admiral said formally, the Galactic Council appreciates Earth's gesture. However, we must question whether this level of contribution demonstrates true commitment to our alliance. Are you suggesting Earth should be expelled from the Federation? Chen asked. The question caught many delegates off guard. Expelling a member world was a serious step, usually reserved for species that actively worked against Federation interests. Not expelled, said the representative from Tau Ceti, a spider-like being with multiple eyes. But perhaps Earth's membership should be reviewed. If you cannot contribute meaningfully to our common defense, what value does your membership have? More murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Chen noticed that several representatives were already turning their attention to other matters, dismissing Earth as irrelevant. I propose a compromise, Admiral Zephys announced. Earth may send its 3 soldiers. If they prove useful, Earth's membership continues unchanged. If they do not, he let the threat hang in the air. And how will their usefulness be measured? Chen asked. Results, Commander Vash growled. Can 3 humans accomplish what armies cannot? Can they turn the tide of battle? Can they strike fear into the hearts of the Vorthak Empire? Yes, Chen said without hesitation. They can and they will. The chamber erupted in fresh laughter. Even species that usually remained quiet joined in the mockery. The idea that 3 soldiers from a primitive world could succeed where massive fleets might fail seemed absurd beyond belief. Admiral Zephys called for a formal vote. The measure passed easily, though many delegates clearly viewed it as a joke. Earth would be allowed to send its 3 soldiers, and their performance would determine Earth's future in the Federation. As the session ended and representatives began filing out, Chen heard the whispered comments floating around her. 3 soldiers against an empire. The humans have lost their minds. At least when they fail, we will have clear grounds for expulsion. Perhaps we should send them flowers for their funerals. Chen ignored them all. She had tried to warn them, to prepare them for what was coming. But like so many others throughout history, they would learn the truth the hard way. Earth was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about underestimating humans. As she walked toward the exit, Chen allowed herself a small smile. The other representatives had no idea what they were about to witness. They thought warfare was about numbers and big weapons and dramatic space battles. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous enemies were the ones you never saw coming. 3 soldiers, 3 humans who understood that wars were not always won by the biggest army or the strongest weapons. Sometimes they were won by being smarter, faster, and more creative than anyone expected. The Vorthak Empire was about to learn that lesson too. The military staging base on Outpost 7 looked like a city built for giants. Massive hangar bays stretched for kilometers, filled with alien warships that dwarfed anything Earth had ever built. Soldiers from dozens of species marched in formation across landing platforms the size of football fields. In the middle of this overwhelming display of military might, a small Earth transport ship settled onto an unused corner of the smallest landing pad. The ship was barely larger than an old Earth cargo truck. Its gray paint was chipped and faded. Next to the gleaming alien vessels surrounding it, the human ship looked like a toy. 3 figures stepped out of the ship's modest airlock. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos emerged first. She was a compact woman in her early 30s with intelligent brown eyes and calloused hands. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight bun that had not moved despite the long journey. She wore standard Earth combat fatigues with no visible weapons except a multi-tool on her belt. To any observer, she looked like a mechanic, not a soldier. Corporal James Kim followed her down the ramp. He was tall and thin with the pale skin of someone who spent most of his time indoors. His dark hair fell across his eyes and he moved with the careful precision of someone who noticed everything around him. Unlike Santos, he carried what appeared to be a large rifle case, though it was sealed and gave no hint of its contents. Lieutenant Commander David Rodriguez came last. He was built like a tree trunk, with broad shoulders and arms that strained against his uniform sleeves. His beard was neatly trimmed and his expression was calm, almost sleepy. He carried 2 large duffel bags that clinked softly when he moved. Despite his size, he walked quietly. The 3 humans gathered their gear and looked around the massive base. Everywhere they looked, alien soldiers stared back at them with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. A Drakmari officer approached them. He stood nearly 3 meters tall and his scaled skin gleamed under the base's artificial lights. His name tag read Captain Thoris in both alien script and Federation standard. "You are the humans," he said. It was not a question. His voice carried the same tone someone might use to identify a strange insect. "We are," Santos replied politely. "Staff Sergeant Santos, Corporal Kim, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez. Reporting for duty." Captain Thoris looked them up and down. His expression suggested he was not impressed. 3 soldiers to fight an empire. This is some kind of human joke, yes? "No joke," Rodriguez said in a voice like gravel. "We are here to do a job." The Drakmari captain snorted, a sound like steam escaping from a pipe. "Follow me. Command wants to brief you before you contribute to the war effort." He led them through the base's main corridors. Everywhere they went, work stopped as aliens paused to stare at the humans. Groups of soldiers whispered among themselves. Some pointed openly. A few made sounds that were clearly laughter. Kim noticed everything but said nothing. His eyes tracked each face, each reaction, each detail of the base's layout. Santos studied the technology around them, noting power sources and communication arrays. Rodriguez simply walked forward, ignoring the attention entirely. They passed training areas where hundreds of alien soldiers practiced combat maneuvers. Zephyrian troops moved in perfect formation, their blue skin flashing as they performed complex weapons drills. Aquarian forces worked in specially designed water-filled environments, their movements graceful and deadly. Crystalline coalition warriors practiced with weapons that could cut through solid metal. "Impressive," Santos said quietly. "How many troops are stationed here?" 50,000. Captain Thoris replied with obvious pride. "The largest military base in Federation space. From here we will launch the assault that crushes the Vorthak Empire." "Where exactly will you attack?" Kim asked. Captain Thoris stopped walking and turned to face the humans. "That information is classified. Why would 3 soldiers need to know overall strategy?" "Because we might be able to help," Rodriguez said simply. The Drakmari captain laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Help, you 3? The Vorthak Empire has conquered 12 star systems. They have weapons that can destroy entire fleets. They have soldiers who feel no fear and show no mercy. And you think 3 humans can help?" "Yes," Santos said. "We do." Captain Thoris shook his head and continued walking. "Humans," he muttered in his own language, forgetting that the humans' translation devices could understand him. Arrogant and stupid. They arrived at a briefing room filled with alien officers. A holographic display showed the current state of the war. Red areas marked Vorthak territory. Blue showed Federation space. The red areas were growing larger every day. Admiral Zephys stood at the front of the room. His 6 arms moved constantly as he pointed to different parts of the display. "The enemy has concentrated their forces around Kepler 442b. Our intelligence suggests they are building some kind of command station in orbit. If we can destroy this station, we might slow their advance." "What kind of assault are you planning?" Santos asked. Every alien in the room turned to look at her. Several officers exchanged glances that clearly said, "Why is a human asking questions?" Admiral Zephys studied Santos for a moment before answering. "Direct assault. We will bring the full might of the Federation fleet to bear on their position. Overwhelming force applied with precision and speed." "What about the station's defenses?" Kim asked quietly. "Considerable," the Admiral admitted. "Our scouts report massive shield generators, hundreds of weapons platforms, and at least 10,000 Vorthak soldiers aboard. The casualties will be quite significant." "How significant?" Rodriguez wanted to know. Admiral Zephys hesitated. "Perhaps 60% of our forces. But if we succeed, we could turn the tide of the war." The humans exchanged a look. Santos frowned slightly. Kim's expression remained neutral. Rodriguez made a small sound that might have been disapproval. "Is there a problem?" Captain Thoris asked with obvious irritation. "No problem," Santos said carefully. "We are just wondering if there might be other approaches." "Other approaches?" Admiral Zephys sounded genuinely curious. "What do you mean?" "Well," Santos said slowly, "sometimes big problems have small solutions. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is not to fight at all." The room fell silent. Several alien officers looked confused. A few looked annoyed. "Humans," Captain Thoris said with disgust. "This is war, not philosophy class. The Vorthak understand only strength. They respect only force. We will meet their violence with greater violence. Of course, Santos said politely. We understand. Where would you like us to serve? Admiral Zephys consulted a datapad. You will be assigned to the assault on the command station. Since you are only 3 soldiers, you will support the main attack force. Perhaps you can provide distraction while our real warriors do the fighting. That works for us, Rodriguez said. The briefing continued for another hour. The aliens discussed strategy and tactics with military precision. Their plan was solid, professional, and would definitely work if they were willing to accept massive casualties. When the meeting ended, the humans were assigned quarters in the base's smallest residential section. Their rooms were barely large enough for 1 person each. Clearly the worst accommodations available. That night, as the base settled into its sleep cycle, the 3 humans met quietly in Santos's room. What do you think? She asked. They are going to get themselves killed, Kim said bluntly. A direct assault on a fortified position? With those casualty estimates, it is a waste of good soldiers. The Vorthak are expecting exactly that kind of attack, Rodriguez added. They have probably prepared for it. Big fleet, big battle, lots of explosions. Very predictable, Santos nodded. So we stick to the original plan? Original plan, Kim confirmed. Rodriguez smiled for the first time since arriving at the base. This is going to be interesting. Outside their quarters, alien soldiers continued their preparations for the great battle to come. They checked weapons, reviewed tactics, and prepared for the massive assault that would either save the Federation or destroy its military. None of them paid any attention to the 3 humans in the corner rooms. Why would they? 3 soldiers could not possibly affect the outcome of such a huge operation. The humans understood this perfectly. They were counting on being ignored. Tomorrow, while the alien fleets prepared for their dramatic battle, 3 humans would begin a very different kind of war. The Federation fleet formed up in perfect battle formation outside the Kepler 442 system. Hundreds of ships arranged themselves in attack wings that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. The sight was magnificent and terrible, a display of military might that few civilizations could match. Admiral Zephys stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final preparations. Around him, his staff worked with practiced efficiency. Communications officers coordinated between different species fleets. Weapons officers ran final checks on systems that could crack moons. Navigation specialists plotted attack vectors that would bring maximum firepower to bear on the enemy position. All fleets report ready, announced his aide. Shall we begin the assault? In 1 hour, the admiral replied. Let the enemy see us coming. Let them prepare their defenses. When we attack, I want them to know they face the full might of the Federation. What the admiral did not know was that 3 humans were already inside the enemy stronghold. Santos crouched in a maintenance tunnel deep within the Vorthak command station. The tunnel was barely wide enough for her shoulders, and the air tasted of metal and ozone. Around her, the station's power systems hummed with energy that could have powered entire cities. She had been crawling through these tunnels for 6 hours, following power conduits and data cables toward the station's central computer core. Her portable scanner showed dozens of security checkpoints above her, each one guarded by Vorthak soldiers who would kill her without hesitation if they found her. The Vorthak had not expected anyone to attack from inside their own ventilation systems. 2 kilometers away, Kim lay perfectly still in a darkened observation bay. His rifle was assembled and aimed at a critical junction where several main corridors met. He had been in position for 4 hours without moving a muscle. His breathing was so slow and quiet that even sensitive alien sensors could not detect him. Through his scope, he watched Vorthak patrols move through the corridors below. The enemy soldiers were impressive, standing nearly as tall as Drakmari but with chitinous armor that seemed to be part of their bodies. They carried weapons that glowed with deadly energy. Their movements were precise and efficient. Kim counted their patrol patterns, noted their reaction times, and memorized every detail of their equipment. Soon he would begin eliminating key targets, but not yet. Timing was everything. 3 levels down, Rodriguez worked in what had once been a storage bay. He had somehow managed to move several tons of equipment into the space without triggering any alarms. Now he methodically assembled devices that would have made alien engineers weep with confusion. Rodriguez was not just a weapons specialist. He was an artist whose medium was controlled destruction. The devices he built were not designed to make impressive explosions or cause maximum casualties. They were designed to be precise, subtle, and absolutely devastating to specific targets. Each device was custom-built for its intended location. One would disable the station's artificial gravity in a specific section. Another would overload the power grid feeding the shield generators. A third would introduce false data into the sensor networks that monitored the station's outer hull. The Vorthak had designed their station to withstand massive external attacks. They had not prepared for someone who understood exactly how to make complex systems fail in very specific ways. Santos reached the computer core after 8 hours of crawling. The chamber was enormous, filled with processing units that glowed with alien light. Streams of data flowed through crystalline networks that computed everything from life support to weapons targeting. She studied the setup for several minutes before beginning her work. The Vorthak used quantum-encrypted data streams that would have been impossible for most species to penetrate. But Santos was not trying to break their encryption. She was doing something much more clever. Instead of attacking the data directly, she began introducing tiny errors into the quantum fields that carried information throughout the station. The errors were so small that the system's safeguards did not detect them. But they would multiply and spread, creating cascading failures that would grow worse over time. Kim began his work when the Federation fleet started its approach. He fired his first shot just as the alien warships entered the system's outer boundaries. The shot was perfect, traveling nearly a kilometer to strike a Vorthak officer in the head. The officer simply collapsed without a sound. The other Vorthak soldiers in the corridor did not even notice. Their companion had been standing near a wall, and when he fell, it looked like he was resting. It would be hours before anyone discovered the body. Kim's second shot came 10 minutes later. This time he eliminated a technician who was working alone in a side passage. Again, the kill was silent and unnoticed. The technician simply seemed to have wandered off somewhere. With each shot, Kim removed another piece from the Vorthak command structure. Officers who coordinated between sections, specialists who monitored critical systems, guards who protected important positions. One by one, they vanished without anyone realizing what was happening. Rodriguez activated his first device as the Federation fleet formed its final attack formation. The device was hidden in a power junction that fed the station's long-range communications array. When it activated, it sent a precise electrical surge through the network. To outside observers, nothing seemed to happen. The communications array continued to function normally, but Rodriguez's device had introduced a tiny delay into all outgoing messages. The delay was only a few milliseconds, barely noticeable, but it meant that when the station tried to coordinate with other Vorthak forces, their timing would be slightly off. His second device activated when the Federation ships began their final approach. This one was hidden in the station's sensor grid. It began feeding false information into the targeting computers, making enemy ships appear to be in slightly different positions than they actually were. Again, the changes were tiny. A few meters here, a few degrees there. Not enough to be easily noticed, but enough to make the station's weapons miss their targets. Santos finished her work in the computer core as the first Federation weapons began firing. She had not destroyed anything or stolen any information. Instead, she had planted something far more dangerous: doubt. Her quantum field manipulations would gradually corrupt the station's database. Over the next few hours, the corruption would spread through every system connected to the main computer. Navigation data would become unreliable. Weapons targeting would drift off course. Life support systems would receive conflicting commands. The station's crew would spend more and more time trying to figure out why their equipment was malfunctioning. They would run diagnostics, restart systems, and replace components, but the problems would keep getting worse, because the corruption was built into the quantum structure of their data streams. The three humans began their extraction as the main battle erupted around the station. Federation ships launched massive attacks against the Vorthak defenses. Energy beams that could melt asteroids struck shields that could deflect entire fleets. The space around Kepler 442b lit up with weapon fire that was visible from neighboring star systems. But inside the station, a different kind of chaos was beginning. Vorthak officers discovered that their communications with other ships were garbled. Orders arrived late or not at all. Status reports contained contradictory information. Navigation computers showed their own ships in impossible positions. Weapons officers found that their targeting systems could not lock onto Federation vessels. Every time they acquired a target, the lock would slip away. Their most powerful guns fired at empty space while enemy ships attacked from unexpected angles. Security teams searching for the missing personnel could not coordinate their efforts. Their communication systems worked, but the messages they sent somehow never arrived at the right destinations. Patrols wandered through corridors looking for threats that seemed to disappear whenever they got close. The station's commander, a massive Vorthak warrior named Overlord Kreeth, watched his perfectly organized defenses fall apart for no reason he could understand. His status displays showed that all systems were functioning normally. But nothing worked correctly. What is happening? He demanded from his bridge crew. Why can our weapons not hit the enemy ships? Why are our communications failing? His officers had no answers. According to every diagnostic they ran, their equipment was operating within normal parameters, but somehow nothing functioned as it should. Kim fired his final shot as the three humans regrouped at their extraction point. This shot eliminated the Vorthak officer who was coordinating the search for the missing personnel. With him gone, the security response collapsed entirely. Rodriguez activated his last device as they reached their small transport ship. This device would destroy all evidence of their presence. It would simultaneously overload power systems throughout the section where they had been working, causing exactly the kind of damage that might be expected from stray weapon fire during a major battle. Santos uploaded a final virus into the station's computer network as their ship prepared to launch. This virus would not cause immediate damage. Instead, it would lie dormant for several weeks before activating. When it did activate, it would broadcast the station's security codes and tactical data to every Federation ship within range. The 30 victory at Kepler 442b sent shockwaves through both the Federation and the Vorthak Empire. What should have been a desperate last stand had turned into a decisive victory with minimal casualties. Federation commanders celebrated their unexpected success, while Vorthak leaders struggled to understand how their most fortified position had fallen so easily. Admiral Zephys stood in the captured command center of the Vorthak station, surrounded by alien technology that still hummed with mysterious power. His technical teams were working frantically to understand how the enemy systems had malfunctioned so catastrophically. It makes no sense, reported his chief engineer, a crystalline being whose body sparked with frustrated energy. Every diagnostic shows their equipment was functioning perfectly. Yet somehow nothing worked correctly during the battle. Equipment failure? The Admiral suggested. Impossible. The Vorthak build the most reliable military technology in the galaxy. For all their systems to fail simultaneously, the odds are billions to 1 against. Admiral Zephys frowned. Something about the victory bothered him, though he could not identify what. The battle had gone too well, too easily. The enemy had made mistakes that seasoned warriors should never make. Meanwhile, in the captured data cores, Santos worked quietly with a team of Federation code specialists. Officially, she was helping them understand Vorthak computer systems. Unofficially, she was downloading every piece of information about the enemy empire's military structure. Their network architecture is fascinating, she told the other technicians. Everything connects to a central artificial intelligence that coordinates their entire military. Ships, bases, supply lines, everything runs through this AI system. That seems inefficient, observed a Zephyrian engineer. Why centralize so much control? Because it allows perfect coordination, Santos explained. No communication delays, no misunderstandings, no conflicting orders. The AI can manage millions of units simultaneously with perfect precision. What she did not mention was that centralized systems also had centralized weaknesses. If someone could access the core AI, they could potentially control the entire Vorthak military. It was a possibility that would have terrified the Federation leadership if they had understood it. But Santos was beginning to understand it very well. 2 days after the victory, the 3 humans received new orders. They were to accompany a Federation strike force to the next target, a Vorthak industrial world that produced their most advanced warships. Intelligence suggested the planet was heavily defended and would require another massive assault. Kim studied the intelligence reports with his usual careful attention to detail. The planet's defenses were formidable. Orbital platforms, surface-to-space weapons, millions of soldiers. A conventional attack would cost hundreds of thousands of lives and might not succeed at all. The Federation is planning another direct assault, he told his companions. They want to hit the shipyards with everything they have. Same strategy as before, Rodriguez observed. Big fleet, big battle, massive casualties. They learned nothing from our last mission, Santos said. They think the victory was due to luck or equipment failure. They do not understand what really happened. The three humans had requested a private meeting with Admiral Zephys, but their request had been denied. The Admiral was busy planning the next major offensive and had no time for three soldiers, even ones who had been present during the previous victory. So we proceed with the original plan, Santos concluded. Original plan, Kim agreed. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Time to teach the galaxy another lesson about human warfare. The Federation fleet that assembled for the second assault was even larger than the first. Word of the easy victory had spread throughout Federation space, and member worlds were eager to contribute to what seemed like a winning campaign. Nearly 1,000 ships gathered in the staging area, representing the largest military force in Federation history. The three humans departed the main fleet in their small transport ship 2 days before the scheduled attack. Officially, they were conducting advance reconnaissance. In reality, they were beginning a mission that would reshape the entire war. Their target was not the heavily defended industrial world. Instead, they headed for a seemingly unimportant system at the edge of Vorthak space. Long-range scans showed only a few small facilities and minimal defenses. Most Federation planners had dismissed it as irrelevant. But Santos had identified it as something much more important: the location of the central AI that controlled the entire Vorthak military. The system contained what appeared to be a small research station. In reality, it housed the most sophisticated artificial intelligence ever created, a quantum computer that could process information faster than entire fleets of conventional computers. The Vorthak had hidden it in an obscure location precisely because it was so valuable. This AI coordinates everything, Santos explained as their ship approached the system. Ship movements, supply deliveries, battle plans, resource allocation. If we can access it, we might be able to do more than just disable local defenses. What exactly are you thinking? Kim asked. Santos smiled. I am thinking about the Trojan horse. The ancient human story was not well known among alien species, but all three humans understood the reference. Rather than trying to break down the enemy's defenses, they would convince the enemy to invite them inside. Their ship approached the research station using stolen Vorthak identification codes that Santos had extracted from the captured command station. To the station's sensors, they appeared to be a small courier vessel carrying routine supplies. The station's automated defenses ignored them completely. Why would a Vorthak supply ship pose any threat? The few guards on duty barely glanced at their approach. Routine supply runs happened every few days, and there was nothing unusual about this one. Santos had reprogrammed their ship's transponder to broadcast the correct authentication codes. She had also created false manifest data, showing they were delivering replacement components for the station's quantum processors. Everything appeared completely normal. They docked at the station's cargo bay without incident. Kim and Rodriguez remained with the ship while Santos proceeded to the main computer core. She wore a stolen Vorthak uniform that she had modified to fit her human physique. In the dim lighting of the station's corridors, she could pass for a Vorthak technician as long as no one looked too closely. The station's crew was small, perhaps 50 individuals who maintained the AI and its supporting systems. Most of them were absorbed in their work and paid no attention to what appeared to be a routine maintenance visit. Santos reached the central computer core after 20 minutes of careful movement through the station's corridors. The chamber was enormous, filled with quantum processing units that glowed with their own inner light. The air hummed with energy as trillions of calculations flowed through crystalline networks. This was the brain of the Vorthak Empire. Every military decision, every tactical choice, every strategic plan originated here. The AI processed data from millions of sources and made decisions with perfect logic and unlimited processing power. Santos connected her portable computer to one of the maintenance ports and began her real work. She was not trying to destroy the AI or steal its data. Instead, she was going to reprogram it. The task should have been impossible. The AI was protected by layers of security that would have stopped any conventional attack. Its programming was written in quantum code that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Changing even a single instruction should have required years of work by teams of experts. But Santos was not using conventional methods. Instead, she was exploiting a fundamental flaw in artificial intelligence design, the assumption that all input data was reliable. The AI made decisions based on information it received from sensors, reports, and databases throughout the Vorthak Empire. It trusted this information completely because it came from authenticated sources using verified encryption. The possibility that someone might feed it false information had been considered so unlikely that the designers had not built adequate safeguards against it. Santos began feeding the AI carefully crafted false data. She did not flood it with obviously fake information that would trigger security protocols. Instead, she introduced subtle errors that seemed like normal intelligence reports. She told the AI that several Federation fleets were massing near systems that were actually empty. She reported equipment failures in Vorthak ships that were actually functioning perfectly. She described resource shortages that did not exist and strategic threats that were completely imaginary. The AI processed this false information with its usual perfect logic. If Federation fleets were gathering near System A, then Vorthak forces should be moved to defend it. If ships in Fleet B were experiencing equipment failures, they should be recalled for repairs. If Resource C was running low, Supply Route D should be adjusted to compensate. Each individual decision was logical and appropriate. But together, they would cause the entire Vorthak military to begin moving in response to threats that did not exist. Santos worked for 6 hours, carefully introducing layer after layer of false information into the AI's decision-making process. The collapse began slowly, then accelerated beyond anyone's ability to comprehend. Admiral Zephys stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching displays that showed the impossible. Across 12 star systems, the Vorthak Empire was falling apart, not from external attack but from internal chaos that grew worse with each passing hour. "Report from Sector 7, announced his communications officer. "The Vorthak Defense Fleet has abandoned their positions and is heading toward empty space. They claim they are responding to a massive Federation attack, but our sensors show no Federation ships in that area." "Sector 12 reports similar activity," added another officer. 3 Vorthak battle groups are converging on a supply depot that was destroyed 2 weeks ago. They appear to believe it is under attack." Admiral Zephys studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. Red markers showing Vorthak forces were moving in patterns that made no strategic sense. Fleets were leaving defended positions to chase threats that did not exist. Supply lines were being rerouted to deliver resources where they were not needed. "Are they trying to confuse us?" he asked his tactical officer. "If they are, it is not working," came the reply. "Their movements are so chaotic that we could attack any of their positions with minimal resistance. It appears they are fighting a war that exists only in their imagination." The Admiral was not the only one watching in confusion. Throughout Federation space, military commanders found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to have lost its mind. Vorthak ships appeared in unexpected locations, then departed just as suddenly. Enemy forces abandoned strategic positions for no apparent reason. Communications intercepts showed Vorthak commanders receiving orders that contradicted each other from hour to hour. On the bridge of a Federation cruiser near the former front lines, Captain Sarah Chen watched a Vorthak battle fleet destroy itself in what appeared to be a training accident. "They are firing on their own ships," reported her weapons officer in disbelief. "Why?" Captain Chen asked. "Unknown. Their communications indicate they believe they are engaging Federation vessels, but we are 50 light-years away from their position." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Vorthak forces engaged phantom enemies, defended empty systems, and attacked their own allies in response to orders that seemed to come from their own command structure. The 3 humans watched the chaos unfold from the observation deck of Admiral Zephys's flagship. They had rejoined the Federation fleet just as the Vorthak collapse began, claiming they had completed their reconnaissance mission successfully. "How did you know this would happen?" Admiral Zephys asked Santos during an emergency briefing. The Admiral's 6 arms moved restlessly as he tried to understand the situation. "Know what would happen?" Santos replied innocently. "We conducted our assigned reconnaissance. We have no more information than anyone else." But Admiral Zephys was beginning to suspect otherwise. The timing was too convenient. 3 humans had been present during the first impossible victory. Now, after another mission involving the same 3 humans, the entire enemy empire was collapsing. "What exactly did you do during your reconnaissance?" he asked. "We gathered intelligence on enemy positions and defenses," Kim answered. "Standard procedure. And you discovered nothing unusual? No explanation for this chaos?" Rodriguez shrugged his massive shoulders. "Sometimes complex systems fail unexpectedly. The more complex the system, the more spectacular the failure." Admiral Zephys was not satisfied with these answers, but he had no proof of anything beyond standard military operations. The humans' mission reports were complete and professional. Their ship's logs showed they had visited several systems and conducted sensor sweeps of Vorthak positions. Everything appeared routine. What the Admiral did not know was that Santos had hidden additional data streams in the ship's sensor logs. To casual inspection, the logs showed normal reconnaissance activity, but the additional data contained complete technical specifications for the Vorthak Central AI, including the access codes that were now being distributed throughout the Federation fleet. 3 days after the chaos began, the Vorthak Empire's military stopped functioning entirely. Ships drifted in space without orders. Ground forces abandoned their positions without explanation. Supply networks collapsed as resources were diverted to locations that did not exist. Overlord Kreeth, Supreme Commander of the Vorthak military, stood in his command center watching his empire destroy itself. Status reports flooded in from every sector, each one describing impossible failures and contradictory orders. "The Central AI has issued orders for Fleet Alpha to attack Sector 12, reported one of his subordinates. But Fleet Alpha received different orders an hour ago, directing them to defend Sector 18. Both sets of orders carry maximum priority authentication. The AI cannot issue contradictory orders," Kreeth snarled. "That is impossible. Nevertheless, it is happening. Our fleets are receiving multiple conflicting commands, all of which appear to come from legitimate sources. Some commanders are ignoring all orders and acting independently. Others are trying to follow every command simultaneously." Kreeth studied the displays showing his military forces. Units that had operated with perfect coordination for years were now scattered across space, chasing imaginary threats or firing on each other in confusion. "Shut down the Central AI," he ordered. "Return to manual command and control." "We cannot," came the devastating reply. "The AI has become integrated into every system. Shutting it down would disable our communications, navigation, weapons, life support, everything. Our ships would be helpless." Kreeth realized the trap his empire had built for itself. In pursuing perfect efficiency, they had created a single point of failure that could destroy them. And somehow that point of failure had been compromised. "Who did this?" he demanded. "Who could possibly penetrate our most secure systems?" His staff had no answers. The AI showed no signs of external intrusion. All security protocols remained intact. According to every diagnostic they could run, the Central AI was functioning perfectly, yet its behavior had become completely chaotic. What they did not understand was that the AI was functioning perfectly. It was processing information and making logical decisions based on the data it received. The problem was that much of its data was now false, fed to it by sources it trusted completely. The logic virus Santos had planted was also working exactly as designed. Every time the AI tried to coordinate a complex operation, the virus introduced small conflicts that grew larger over time. The more the AI tried to manage the crisis, the worse the crisis became. Within a week, the Vorthak Empire's surrender was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Overlord Kreeth himself delivered the message, explaining that his forces could no longer function as a coherent military. Rather than watch his empire tear itself apart, he was ordering all Vorthak units to lay down their arms. The war that had threatened to consume the galaxy ended not with a climactic battle, but with the enemy's admission that they could no longer fight. Federation leaders celebrated the victory with parades and ceremonies. Historians began writing accounts of the brilliant strategy that had defeated a superior enemy. Military academies analyzed the campaign to understand how such a complete victory had been achieved, but only a few individuals understood what had really happened. Admiral Zephys called the 3 humans to his private office after the surrender ceremonies ended. He closed the door and activated privacy screens that would prevent any recording of their conversation. "Tell me the truth," he said simply. What did you really do? Santos, Kim, and Rodriguez exchanged glances. After a moment, Santos spoke. We showed the galaxy that wars are not always won by the biggest army or the most powerful weapons. Sometimes they are won by understanding your enemy better than they understand themselves. You 3 soldiers defeated an entire empire, the Admiral said. It was not a question. No, Rodriguez corrected. The Vorthak Empire defeated itself. We just helped it along. Admiral Zephys was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. The other species will want to understand how this was accomplished. They will want Earth to share these techniques. Earth would be happy to establish a military academy, Santos replied. We could teach other species about human approaches to warfare, about thinking creatively and finding unconventional solutions to complex problems. And what would be the first lesson in this academy? Kim smiled for the first time since the Admiral had known him. The first lesson would be that the most dangerous enemy is often the one you do not see coming. The second lesson would be that sometimes the best way to defeat a superior force is to make them defeat themselves. Admiral Zephys nodded slowly. I think the galaxy has much to learn from humanity. 6 months later, the Federation Military Academy on Earth opened its doors to students from dozens of worlds. Alien cadets learned about human concepts like asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, and systems thinking. They studied historical examples of how small forces had defeated larger ones through creativity and intelligence, rather than brute force. The instructors were careful not to reveal exactly how the Vorthak Empire had been defeated. Those details remained classified at the highest levels.